Here we go. Here we go. Today, we're going to dive into touring economics. This is going to help prepare you for when this moment comes in your career, what to expect, what your management cuts can look like, what your agency cuts can look like. And I've talked about this in the management and agency video, so I'm not really going to go deep in that again, but I'm going to kind of talk to you and show you like, hey, if this is your fee, these are kind of some of the expenses you might look for and give you like a rough reality of what it's going to look like at the end. And this is the prepare you one because as you grow, you're going to need these team members. You're going to need to understand what other costs come on tour, come with you while you're on tour. And just to kind of expect and plan and have your finances in shape for when these moments come. Purpose of this is just to prepare you. This is going to come and you're going to want to mitigate costs. Maybe this video is going to make you realize like, hey, I don't need a this person in my career yet, but you will to break through certain levels of the career and to reach certain goals and to reach certain fees and to reach certain labels and festivals and clubs. Having a team there will ultimately get you to those goals. And it's one of the reasons, like, and if you go back to my agent and manager video, I dive into that aspect of it. And I'm not and as a manager and as someone who works with agents and as a promoter, like, all these things are needed, but early on in your career it might not be, especially if the person doesn't have a proven track record. And the only time I would say to go against that grain is if you're growing and you have just a close best friend and you all want to do this career thing together, and you're like, I'm going to learn the artist side and you're going to learn the manager side, and we're going to figure this out and grow together. But if it's a random manager, a random agent too early in your career, maybe save the expense. Go into that video as I'm going to talk about some of the positives and negatives of that. I don't need to reiterate that today. I'm going to tap on a few things just so that I've talked about in that same video, just because it's necessary. But as I mentioned before, there's a few different types of deals you're going to get when you start touring from promoters. One's a landed deal, another's an all-in deal, another is all expenses are covered. Those are insanely rare and almost non-existent. And then sometimes there's some creative deals, but for the most part, most of your shows are going to be landed, and then all-ins are going to happen a lot too. And the difference between a landed and an all-in, a landed deal means you, the artist, are covering your flight. And landed means the fee includes everything to get you to that city. So I'm paying you $2,000. You get yourself to Miami. And then once you're in Miami, I cover hotels. I cover your transport. I cover maybe one meal. And then obviously anything for you that you need on your rider at the show. All in deal, pretty self-explanatory, but it means you, the artist, cover everything. That means this fee that I'm giving you is covering your flight. You figure out your own hotel, Airbnb, or lodging. You figure out to get yourself to and from the airport, hotel, and gig. It might sound bad, but sometimes they're not. I do these a lot lately, and it's not that I don't want to cover these costs. I kind of just build the costs into the fee. We've scaled down our team, and dealing with booking hotels and transport logistics is exhausting and time consuming. So I rather just average out that cost and be like, hey, here's the fee plus this cost. Here's another fee to cover this. Just book this stuff yourself. It simplifies the needs, especially with smaller venues that don't have as much staff. This makes it very easy. But I'm going to say 99% of the time, you, the artist, are covering your own flights. And then from your management and agency perspective, these fees are based on gross fees. So if you get $2,000 and you have $500 in flights, your manager and agency aren't taking a cut after the flight costs, they're taking it before it, the gross fee. These can range, but just assume that between an agent and a manager, you're probably losing around 30% or so. There are some sharkier deals out there from major management firms that will game change your career. That's up for you to decide. But I would say on average, between an agent and manager, you're probably losing about 30% there, sometimes less, sometimes more. I've seen 40% between the two. I've seen 20% between the two. It also really just depends on where you're at in your career. If you're already doing 100 plus gigs a year at a decent fee, you're more likely to get a smaller fee because a lot of the early work and building phases have already been done, and now it's just push you to the next level. Versus if you really have nothing going on, it might take a couple years to get to that point. So an agent or a manager is almost working for free for years on end. They're going to want a larger slice. So if and when things work out, they make up for all that time of work. Again, I dived very thoroughly into this in the agent and manager video. Highly recommend watching that one. And then you also consider, depending on where you live, you're going to be taxed on your money. And it's very key, once things start working, talk to a CPA, set up a company structure based on, and this isn't something I'm going to advise you on because different places have different rules, but very often you can deduct a lot of these costs, your flight costs, your manager agency costs, things that happen on tour. You spend some money in the airport, you spend some money in the city, all related to your touring. You might be able to write some of that off and save on taxes. It could help because in reality, between your agent, manager, flights, and the government taking their cut, you're probably making less than 50% of the fee. So that's part one to expect. So if you got if you're an artist based out of Miami and you got maybe a $1,500 offer to play in New York landed, promoter is going to pay for your hotel and transport, but you have to cover your flights. Your flights might range between 150 to $300. So now you're losing you have a $1,500 fee. Let's just say you're a manager and an agent. You're going to lose 30% there, which is $450. So now you're down to $1,050. Now let's just say you get a really good deal on a flight. That's $150. Now you're down to $900. Plus you haven't even talked about the government taking their cut. You'll deal with that at some point. On that $1,500 fee, you might walk away with $600 or $700. So that's part one of what you might expect fee-wise on something like that. Obviously, as you scale up and the fees get bigger and bigger, there will be more costs in your career as you travel, maybe with a tour manager, a media person. Um, you have an assistant, maybe you have, just maybe you decide you want to start flying business or first class. But again, the margins do get better when the fees get bigger, even with all those costs. And then the next part is when you have an agent and a manager, especially an agent, your fees are usually going to them. European agencies do work different, but in the United States, your fees usually go to them, and sometimes they won't pay you out until the tour is complete. You're definitely not getting paid out before the show usually, because you might get a deposit to help you cover your flight. But in case if you miss your flight or something goes wrong with the show, you're gonna have to give that money back, even if you booked the flight, and you might take that loss as well at some point. So just know that you might have to cover some costs and wait 2, 3, 4 weeks till after those shows before you recover those costs in general. So having financial means to sustain during those parts, having a way to book those flights. Some management firms, some agencies do have like a travel option where they might cover your costs for you. Those are variables. Each agency works different. I don't prefer to take on travel costs for an artist. It could be very exhausting when artists might be good or bad with their fun, and I can be left hanging sometimes for a while, especially when they're terrible with their money. And then that's it. Like just expect, like, those are kind of rough ideas of costs that come in. And again, things change. I gave you an example from Miami to New York. There's dozens of flights a day that come in. It's very costly, but might also be doing a gig from Miami to California, which could be more expensive, or Miami to Canada, or Miami to Spain, or Miami to somewhere in South America. And there, the fee might not go up that much more. So maybe you're still getting the $1,500 fee, but now you have a $600 or $700 or $800 flight, and you want to break into that market. And you're also sitting there looking at, hey, between all these different cuts, I might walk away with nothing. I might break even. I might walk away with $100. I might even lose sometimes. And I'm not trying to tell you all this to deter you from this career, just to set expectations that as you grow, even though it feels like the fee is going up, sometimes being a $400 or $500 local DJ with no team might be more profitable than being $1,000 or $1,500 artist that has flight costs and management agency costs. And though that chapter might be tough, it is necessary. And you're gonna have to go through that phase in order to break through the phase that might be much more profitable. Again, hope this doesn't deter you. I'm just trying to be very transparent about some things that some of the future expectations of costs that are going to happen as the touring and building phase. And just to sit, and I know some of you are sitting there, well, like, that seems unfair. If the costs are like that, shouldn't I get more money? Well, on the other side of that table is a promoter that is looking at whatever their cost is to run their event or venue, plus whatever your demand might be. So even though your costs are what your costs are, your demand in that market might not match the needs of your costs. And the promoter needs to also worry about their costs. And there's this tug of war game that is played where both sides are trying to make money, and sometimes it becomes uneven. Sometimes you, the artist, might not make money on a show, but I will tell you, as someone who sits on both sides of the aisle, that I manage artists and I've been the promoter, my artists win more often than I would win as a promoter. As a promoter, we gamble, we trust sometimes agents and managers that tell you, hey, this artist is worth this fee. We do it. We pay someone $3,000 and they sell $200 in tickets, and we have to let everybody in for free just to make sure that's a good show. It happens. It's the name of the game. On all sides of the table, there's risk at this game. It's not easy. If it was, everybody would do it and everybody would be successful. As always, thanks for tuning in. I hope this was very helpful. Good luck to you. And if you want some one-on-one time with me, there's a link in the description below to connect with me. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. It really helps us grow. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you. See you on the next video.